Some days, I wake up wondering where I truly fit. Not at work, not even in familiar circles, just somewhere honest. That quiet question followed me into a cafe one afternoon. It was 4:37 p.m. on a Wednesday, the kind of hour that smells like burnt espresso and recycled air. The cafe speakers hummed a soft, lo-fi playlist, and the milk steamer hissed like it was sighing for all of us. I sat by the window, coat still on, staring into a latte that had gone lukewarm while I wasn't looking. My coffee mug had a thin crack along the rim, a tiny scar I kept tracing with my thumb. I'd bought it years ago at a street market, painted with a fading blue ring that used to be brighter. Somehow, I couldn't throw it away. Maybe because it still worked. Maybe because it felt like me, a little chipped, still holding warmth. Across the room, 3 co-workers from my office sat at a table meant for 4. They were laughing about something that happened at work. Inside jokes layered on top of other inside jokes. The kind you can't join midway, not without breaking the rhythm. I smiled in their direction once, but it landed like a paper airplane that never reached its mark. They'd invited me out a few times last year. I always said yes, hoping to find my place in their orbit. But over time, my laugh started arriving a beat late, my words getting smaller until silence became easier. We just stopped trying. I stirred my latte again. It made no difference. The foam had collapsed hours ago. Somewhere between the clink of cups and the barista's call for another oat milk flat white, I wondered, when did belonging start to feel like performance? I think it happened quietly, somewhere between early promotions and endless Slack channels. At work, I'd learned how to be agreeable, how to wear the kind of smile that keeps things easy. "You're so chill," people said, like it was a compliment. But it didn't feel like one. It felt like camouflage.
There's a line from Alfred Adler I underlined once in a library copy of Understanding Human Nature. He wrote, "The only normal people are those you don't know very well." It made me laugh then, but it hits differently now. Everyone's carrying their own cracked mug. It's just that some of us hide it under foam and sugar. Outside, the street smelled of rain on concrete and car exhaust. A bus pulled up, brakes squealing, and for a second, I thought about catching it. No destination in mind, just away from this table, from the effort of pretending that being alone doesn't sting. But I stayed. I stayed because running wouldn't fix the hollow. My phone lit up with another group photo on social media, people clinking glasses, captioned #FoundFamily. It made my stomach tighten. It's a nice phrase, isn't it? Found family. It implies discovery, like belonging is an object you stumble on if you keep scrolling long enough. But I've searched, and it feels more like a language I used to know but can't quite speak anymore. A gust of wind slipped through the cafe door as someone left, carrying in the smell of wet pavement. I cupped my mug closer. The handle was warm where my fingers had rested. That small heat, mine, not borrowed, was the only steady thing in the room. Maybe that's what Adler meant by Gemeinschaftsgefühl, community feeling, not the shallow comfort of blending in, but the quiet responsibility of connection, the sense that we all live better when we notice one another. I used to think belonging was about being chosen, like the universe or the group chat would tap me on the shoulder and say, "You're in now." But lately, I wonder if it's smaller than that. Maybe belonging is about choosing to stay real where you are, even when it's awkward, even when nobody claps for it. I looked again at that empty chair across from me. It was just a seat, nothing special. But in that moment, it represented every unasked question, every almost connection. The chair didn't reject me, it simply waited. I remembered a viral clip I saw last week. Someone lip-syncing to the line, "I'm tired of being the version of me people like best." It got millions of views, probably because it's true for so many of us.
We shape-shift for acceptance until we forget what our original shape felt like. I caught my reflection in the cafe window, tired eyes, faint smile, hands still on the mug. Nothing dramatic, just a person trying to feel at home in her own skin. Outside, the sun dipped low, painting the glass in amber streaks. Inside, the barista started wiping tables, a cue that the day was ending. I took one last sip, the coffee was bitter now, and set the mug down carefully so it wouldn't crack further. I thought about all the times I'd laughed on cue, agreed too quickly, swallowed an opinion to keep the peace. Little betrayals that seemed harmless until they piled up into a version of me even I didn't recognize. As the cafe emptied, I stayed seated, listening to the hum of the espresso machine cooling down. That sound reminded me of something ending, something that might start again. I don't have an answer yet, just a question I keep circling back to like the ring on that mug. What would it feel like to belong without changing myself? The question sat there between me and the empty chair, quiet, patient, unfinished. I thought if I stayed kind and easy to work with, belonging would follow. Turns out, you can be pleasant and still lonely. At the office, my mug came with me every morning. Its small crack caught the light under the fluorescent bulbs. The blue ring faded like denim washed too many times. It sat beside my keyboard while I smiled through meetings that sounded like foreign languages of metrics and enthusiasm. "Let's keep the energy up," someone said during Monday's huddle. I nodded on cue. The truth was, I hadn't felt real energy in months, just performance, neat and contained. By lunchtime, I'd scroll through #found family clips again. Friends filming dinner tables lit by candles and laughter, the camera panning across faces that looked unguarded. The captions always said something like, "Healing my inner child one dinner at a time." I double-tap, pretending my heart agreed instead of ached. After work, I'd wash my mug in the communal sink. The handle had darkened from years of use, a permanent thumbprint from all the pretending. That night, I couldn't shake the sentence from Adler's book I'd read years ago. Inferiority grows when we measure ourselves instead of serving others. I didn't know what service looked like anymore. Everything felt transactional, networks, small talk, collaborations. We all sounded warm, but no one felt close. At my coworker's birthday dinner, I tried harder. Compliments came out rehearsed. Laughter arrived half a second too late. Someone said, "You're so chill. I wish I could be that calm." Everyone nodded. I smiled. But inside, something flinched. I wasn't calm. I was disappearing. The next morning, I poured coffee into my chipped mug and realized I'd forgotten how to taste it. That week, I started paying attention to other people's small distances. First, there was Paul, the 50-year-old warehouse manager who took evening English classes. He told me once, in broken phrases, that his co-workers avoided him because he talked slow. Yet every night, he still asked how their families were. "They never asked back," he said, eyes soft but tired. Then Maria, a nurse and single mom from my building. She works the night shift at the hospital. She told me she used to bring cookies to share with her unit until a new supervisor joked she was trying too hard. She laughed it off but stopped baking after that. Next, a 27-year-old tech worker, Leo, who just moved to the city. On Reddit, he wrote, "I go to the gym just to hear people's voices." His post had thousands of upvotes. I read every comment and thought, we're all just echoing through our days, hoping someone hears. Finally, a retired teacher named Gwen who volunteers to read online to kids. She once said during a Zoom call, "I miss hearing laughter without a mute button." That one line pierced something in me. Different ages, different lives, same hollow silence dressed up as coping. That Friday, I left the office late. The elevator mirror showed me the same polished version, clean blouse, neutral smile, earbuds in. But under that reflection lived the person I was slowly abandoning. If I don't change now, I will lose myself. The thought landed hard, like setting down a mug too fast and hearing it crack. It wasn't melodrama, it was math. Subtract one honest word a day, add one polite silence. Eventually you vanish from your own life. I went home, opened the window, and listened to the traffic below. The city buzzed with proof of everyone else's belonging. Groups outside bars, laughter spilling down the street. I stayed inside, lit only by the fridge glow and my own restlessness. I remembered a quote that went viral on Threads earlier this year. We're exhausted, not from working too much, but from pretending too much. It had 80,000 likes. It comforted me that strangers understood. It also scared me that so many of us were this tired of performing. Saturday morning, I met my mother for brunch. She noticed the chip in my mug when I poured coffee at her apartment. "You still using that old thing?" she asked. I shrugged. "It still holds." She smiled gently. "So do you." We didn't talk about loneliness, but I think she saw it. Parents can read the quiet parts. She just reached across the table and refilled my cup. Later that day, I wandered through a bookstore. A section labeled Self-Improvement caught my eye. Shelves packed with titles about confidence and charisma. I picked up one but couldn't get past the first chapter. All the advice sounded like costume changes. I realized I didn't want to perform better.
I wanted to be better, truer, less filtered. That evening, I washed the mug again and noticed a hairline crack spreading near the handle. I thought about throwing it out, but something in me resisted. I wrapped both hands around it, feeling the faint warmth it held from the rinse water. Maybe that was enough proof I wasn't gone yet. I stood by the window again, city lights flickering like distant campfires. Somewhere out there, Paul was practicing English phrases. Maria was changing sheets in an ICU. Leo was probably lifting weights to the hum of fluorescent lights. Gwen was reading Charlotte's Web into her laptop mic. And me, I was just standing there, trying to find my own voice beneath all the politeness. I whispered, almost like a prayer, "I don't want to disappear." Outside, a siren wailed, then faded. Inside, the mug cooled on the counter. Sunday came with gray light and a drizzle that softened every sound. I sat at my kitchen table, the chipped mug between my palms, steam rising in slow ribbons. For the first time in weeks, I didn't turn on a podcast or scroll my phone. I just listened to the refrigerator hum, to rain whispering against the glass, to my own heartbeat saying, "Stay with yourself." That silence felt like an introduction, not an emptiness. On Monday, I arrived at work early. The office was still half dark, monitors blinking awake. The air smelled faintly of copier toner and the janitor's lemon cleaner. I poured coffee into my mug and noticed how the crack along its rim caught a small glint of morning light, like it was winking. At 10, I spotted the new intern, Maya, sitting alone at the break table with her lunchbox. She looked how I'd felt for months, careful. Every movement seemed measured, like she didn't want to take up too much space. I recognized that posture instantly. It's the body's way of saying, "Please don't notice that I don't belong yet." Normally, I'd nod politely and keep walking, but my feet stopped before my brain caught up. I filled a spare mug from the rack, plain white, still damp from washing, and carried both cups to her table. "Mind if I sit?" She looked surprised, then smiled. "Please." We talked about nothing profound. Office coffee versus the cafe down the street. The weird silence of open plan spaces. Her favorite dumpling spot near the train station. 10 minutes, maybe 15. But when she laughed, it was real, unguarded. Something in my chest unclenched. Later that afternoon,
She left a small sticky note on my monitor. "Thanks for making the first day less scary." I tucked it inside my notebook. I didn't realize how much I'd needed to read those words myself. That night, I walked home without earbuds. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that mirrored the city lights. The smell of wet asphalt mixed with the bakery's leftover sugar. My reflection appeared in every shop window. Same coat, same tired face, but something lighter in the shoulders. Carl Rogers once wrote, "When I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." I'd read that quote before, but I finally understood it. Change doesn't start when you become a new person. It starts when you stop punishing the old one. That week, I tried small experiments in honesty. When a coworker asked how my weekend was, I said, "Quiet, but good." I realized I've been lonelier than I thought. He blinked, surprised, then nodded and said, "Me too." We talked for 5 minutes about family far away, the way city friendships slip through schedules. It wasn't deep, but it was true. Every time I risked saying something real, something softened between me and the world, like a window cracking open in a stuffy room. Midweek, during lunch, I found myself surrounded by conversation that didn't require effort. Someone asked if I wanted to join a trivia night. The old me would have made an excuse. This time, I said yes, even if my voice trembled. At trivia night, I sat between co-workers I once feared annoying.
We got half the answers wrong and laughed anyway.
I spilled coffee on my sleeve. Someone passed me a napkin. It wasn't cinematic, just kind. The next morning, my mug's chip looked deeper, maybe from the dishwasher. For a second, I worried it would finally break, but when I poured coffee, it still held steady. I smiled. Maybe belonging wasn't about being flawless, but about still holding. I placed the mug on my desk beside the sticky note from Maya. The note had curled at the edges, the ink fading. Still legible, still there. That day I wrote in my journal, belonging didn't arrive like an invitation. It began the moment I offered warmth instead of waiting for it. Later that week I met Paul from the warehouse in the elevator. We didn't talk much, but I asked how his English classes were going. He grinned, proud. "Better now. Teachers say I sound confident." I said, "That's because you keep showing up." He tapped his chest and said, "You too." It felt like a benediction. When I got home, I washed my mug again. The crack looked like a thin smile now, holding light instead of threat. I dried it carefully, placed it by the sink, and watched the last drop of water trace its curve before disappearing. The house smelled of rain and detergent. Somewhere in the distance, a neighbor's child laughed. I thought about all of us: Paul, Maya, Maria on her night shift, Leo at the gym, Gwen reading online. Each of us sending out small signals of care, hoping someone receives them. Maybe that's all community really is. A collection of quiet offers that ripple outward. Authenticity is the doorway others were waiting for. And maybe I'd finally open mine, just a little. It's morning again. The city outside my window is half awake. The street cleaners moving slow. The bakery downstairs pulling trays of croissants from the oven. That smell of butter and new beginnings floats up to my apartment. I stand barefoot in the kitchen, kettle humming, holding the same chipped mug that's followed me through so many small awakenings. Steam fogs the window as I pour the water. For a second, I see my reflection blurred with the skyline. Me and the city, both imperfect, both somehow still here. The mug's crack has widened a little, a pale line running along the blue ring. I run my thumb across it the way you trace a scar you've made peace with. Here's what stayed with me. Belonging never arrives like a package with your name neatly printed on it. It grows quietly like ivy, slow, patient, winding through the cracks you once tried to hide. These past weeks, I've started noticing other small bridges. The janitor who hums old Motown songs while emptying trash cans. I hum along now.
Maria from my building, the nurse, left cookies by the lobby again. I knocked on her door and told her they tasted like cinnamon and courage. She laughed so hard she cried. Maya, the intern, brings her own mug now. She sits with me sometimes, and we talk about everything from deadlines to bad reality shows. I tell her she reminds me that kindness doesn't need permission. And Paul, the warehouse manager, sent an email written entirely in English. It ended with, "Thank you for asking me about my class. That made me brave." I read it 3 times. Brave. The word landed softly but stayed loud inside me. One night last week I couldn't sleep. I stood by the window again, holding the mug like a touchstone. The city lights looked like constellations pretending to be reachable. And I realized something I wish I'd understood years ago. You don't belong because people approve of you. You belong the moment you decide to show up as yourself. Alfred Adler once said that community health depends on each person feeling useful to another. But useful doesn't have to mean impressive. Sometimes it's just showing up with coffee, a question, or an honest sentence. Sometimes it's texting someone, thinking of you, without needing a reply. Carl Rogers called it congruence, the alignment between who you are and how you live. When those two things finally touch, peace doesn't feel dramatic. It just feels normal. There's a new rhythm now. I still have lonely days, everyone does. But they don't hollow me out the way they used to. They remind me to reach, not retreat. At work, I've stopped performing the chill version of myself. When I'm confused in meetings, I ask questions. When I disagree, I say so gently. No one has left me for it yet. If anything, conversations feel more alive. Yesterday, I caught a glimpse of my mug on the break table next to 5 others. Different shapes, colors, chips, stains. Somehow they looked beautiful together. A small tribe of survivors. That made me smile. I think back to that empty cafe chair from weeks ago. It's not empty anymore, not literally. Maybe not even symbolically. I see that chair in every small act of connection now. In Paul's brave email, Maria's cookies, Maya's laughter, my mother's refill of coffee. The circle keeps widening, not through big gestures, but through ordinary sincerity. Try this tonight. Instead of scrolling until your thumb goes numb, send one honest message. Not a meme or a thumbs up, something real. Hey, I miss your voice. Or, today was rough, but I thought of you. One line that reminds both of you you're still here. Then pour yourself a cup of something warm. It doesn't matter if the mug is chipped. Hold it with both hands. Feel the weight, the heat, the proof that you're part of something, even if it's just this small shared world we keep rebuilding through care. When I finish my coffee, the morning light hits the mug just right, filling the crack with gold. It's still broken, but it's also beautiful. A line from Adler returns to me like a blessing. A healthy community is built by imperfect people who choose to care. That's all I'm trying to do now. Care, imperfectly, honestly, daily. The kettle cools, a child laughs in the hallway, and somewhere outside a bus sighs to a stop. The world keeps moving, and somehow I feel inside it again. I whisper, more to myself than anyone else. You belong here, exactly as you are.